Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 189 of the Revive Yourself podcast. Here we go.
Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Have you got a health issue that just won't go away no matter what you try? Then welcome to the Revive Yourself podcast, where we reveal the secrets to long-lasting health by getting to the root cause of problems that no one else is talking about. So you can have more energy, clear skin, healthier hair, a leaner physique, more confidence, and most importantly, do the things you love and live the life you deserve. Here's your host, Ryan Martin.
And how are you, mate? How's it going in Mexico?
Yeah, I'm actually in Costa Rica now. So
You're in Costa Rica. Oh, wow.
we moved. We come over about two and a bit weeks ago. Just fancied, we just heard good things and fancied like a change. And so we were in a place called Santa Teresa, which is got it's like the health conscious part, but it's it's a surfing town, and it's getting more westernized. It's getting more higher end or bougie, as the Americans like to say, but it's still got like that earthy substance to it, like dusty roads, people on ATVs, but big waves.
Yeah.
And so Paul Saladino, the carnivore MD, do you know
I
him?
do know the carnivore MD, but I've forgotten the name. Isn't ringing a bell.
Yeah, he lives here, and a few others like moved here because it was.
So what's the situation in Costa Rica compared to Mexico in terms of being out of the frame of, because obviously the Mexican government are they're not really on board with the New World Order and all that kind of stuff. So is that a similar situation in Costa Rica? Is it?
So basically, well, I tell you, when it comes to the Mexican government do as they're told by the cartel. So
Yeah, we're going to say.
yeah, it's like all the countries that are run by governments are following this agenda, and all the countries that are run by cartels aren't, because the ones that are run by cartels didn't ever have to shut down. It's why like the mafia in Italy, I talked about this before, the mafia in Italy, you went to the government about a year ago and were like, unless you give us some of the contracts vaccinating people, we're going to cause a big fucking issue. And so that's what they actually got the contracts for. And they started vaccinating people because they were losing money on obviously prostitution, drug sales, etc., because they shut down. Whereas in Mexico, they never shut down because they run things. That's why I went there to begin with. And so in Costa Rica, it was open. There's like certain places want you to wear a mask to walk in, but we don't go to those places. It's very few of them.
There's nothing. What's the travel time from Costa Rica to Mexico? It's not that much, is it?
2 hours, hour and a half. Yeah, it's like hour and a half. It's just
no. There's none of the vaccine nonsense going to.
So if you don't have a vaccine, they want you to get COVID health insurance, which is basically just insurance to cover them should you get COVID and need a respirator, etc., which we both know is complete nonsense anyway, but they cover you on that. And so that's what they want you to do. This place was actually open as well. What I found as well, Roy, probably as you have, it doesn't even matter what country you're in. If you're in secluded parts, it doesn't fucking exist, apart from occasional people that are probably brought into it and they get scared, which is the whole point of it anyway. But like, even I went to a wedding last year in the summer in England, in Norfolk, and there was nothing. No, it was in secluded part of Norfolk. No one was doing any of this. It's because it was just like out. It's all the big cities where they push this stuff. But in here, it's like it's no one's.
When you're out and about, and you're talking to people, you're going into a bar or restaurant or whatever. What's the general feeling then amongst the people that are kind of over there, either on holiday or doing kind of what you're doing, and also like what about the locals?
Yeah. So
is it general abstinence of government guidelines in those areas?
So put it this way, a lot of the people that we meet that are out here and have been in Mexico are all people like ourselves, because they come here because they know it's all a nonsense. And so most you meet are, very awake individuals who know the crack, who know what's going on. So that's it. And with the locals, they didn't ever have it. It's like in Mexico, they never really had it there. Like very few of them believe it. They don't trust government anyway, especially in Mexico. We don't really trust government in certain areas we were. And so I'd say like, they just been living their lives, getting on with it. And they realize that, it's not an issue. So they don't admit. Some of the laws in certain places say like, you have to wear a mask. So some of them are worried about getting fined by police.
So is it the same situation as what we've got over here, whereas the law or the perceived law is not actually the law? So you've got these mandates where it's, you choose whether you enter it, like you choose whether you enter into that as a contract, but actually it's more of a perception. Or is it actually you're going to get, somebody's going to throw you in a cell for 24 hours and you're going to need a common law solicitor? Or
So over these countries, my man, one of the great thing about these countries, positives and negatives, are everyone's got a price. And so no one's going to chuck you in jail because you're just going to go, here, mate, here's £100. And they'll go, cool. And they go, they don't want to chuck you in jail. They don't do paperwork. They want no hassle. They just,
Ryan, do you follow Jeff Berwick by any chance?
the name rings a bell. Jeff, yeah.
His name is, I think
Or a vigilante.
Oh, vigilante. So I used to watch it. He got me through all of the nightmare of what was going on in England because I didn't escape. So, and there were very few, I've got a close circle of friends that know what's going on. Outside of that, I've got more friends, but they're kind of dispersed around the country or in different countries. So I watched Donald Vigilante and I was watching him. He got thrown in jail and then sort of did actually documented it. I don't know if you saw it. And then he bribed them and he got everybody else out of the jail.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't remember what it was. It might have been, I don't know, like $1,000. He got everybody out of the block, out of the jail, and then, so yeah, I get that.
Yeah, no, so I remember, so I was watching here when I was so we left to Mexico November 2020, and then came back and then went out there again in December and was out there for 7 months, come back in like July last year. And went back to Mexico, then come here. But yeah, I was through that first summer, I was just working, putting out information, listening to him because it was all going on. And he was in Mexico. And I remember that, because he said he went in there, it was like, how much? And just paid for everyone to get out. And that's the thing with these countries. It's like, you've got that there, they don't care. They just want, it's all about making money for them. So if you give,
I guess that's the same situation everywhere, isn't it? It's just that it's a different way of doing it, isn't it? You've got the unscrupulous farmer that at the end of the day, it's a hierarchy, isn't it? And they're making money everyone's making money at a certain level. And then you get to the difficult question of who's making money at the top and why are they allowing or permitting it to happen? Because for sure, I know I've bumped into many people, or I know a few people who have worked very closely in pharma, and they, much like I'm sure you have as well, they're not bad people and they're not doing what they're doing to harm people, although they are aware that it is happening. But when you get up the boardroom ladder, I think, there's some sinister stuff going on, and that becomes very difficult, I guess, for people like us when we're talking to the average layperson who hasn't done any research on any of these subjects, to try and communicate the fact that there's some really interesting mix of big pharma and obviously the origins of where this all came from.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, well, it's like even at a base level, you look at their adverts and it'll be like a man and woman running through a meadow, like, all happy and taking this drug. And then afterwards it'll give like all the side effects. It's like, this is what they do. And it's why people believe in them. They've been programmed from a young age, believe. And I've had some whistleblowers. I had two ringing me up. One was from Pfizer and one was from AstraZeneca on the phone to me. And they said, like, I can't give names, etc. And we had a conversation and I was like, they're like, you don't understand how powerfully they manage us, how powerfully they scrutinize what we're doing. And if you put anything out, how they watch. They said the amount of money they've got. They said what they spent last year on marketing was like, they said 17 times more than what they spend on their research.
Billions, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was like, I mean, this is like, and he's saying when you understand the level that these guys are going to stop anyone putting anything out, which is, we call it misinformation, which is just the truth. It's crazy.
Yes.
And so I'm the same. Like, it's weird for this situation. I've lost some friends from this, really, like friends I've had a long time, but I've had relationships, new ones blossom, and I've also had old ones get even stronger because of, it's pretty like you. I was one of the first only nutcases saying this is all bullshit from the start.
I wanted to ask you about that because I can't remember how I came across. I think it was me that came across your profile rather than the other way around, because I had to wipe a lot of my stuff got deleted. A lot of it, I still have the same Instagram account, but it's obviously under a massive shadow ban, like probably what yours is. For me, it was the week before we went into lockdown. So that would have been think it'd have been the 12th or the 13th or something like that. So obviously I knew.
Was it like 2 years ago, basically, up to the day, like almost to the day? Like,
Yeah, actually it is. It's what are we on now?
full.
March 30, I can't remember what, March 4th. Yeah, it was March. We went into lockdown on March the 20th, I think.
Oh, right, okay. So it's about this time.
All right. About March the 20th. New York went into quarantine on March the 12th. And it was like every awful article I'd ever read, because I used to follow Mike Adams a lot before all of this happened.
Yep.
And I watched his YouTube channel get taken down when he did an amazing expose on water fluoridation. I think it was something like 2 hours long. And that was incredible. It was the most in-depth, detailed analysis of where we got to in terms of water fluoridation around the world and all of the bogus studies and how they'd convinced all the scientists and how there was no evidence for it and how it was an artificial form of, the fertilizer industry, the phosphate mining. And then his YouTube got completely, and that was probably for me, that was one of the pivotal moments when I was like, okay, there's something really, really sinister going on here. And then that builds up and up and up. And because I followed his website, a lot of it, to be honest, sometimes I had to turn away from it because it was so unnerving. And I had a habit of looking at this stuff at, 10:30 at night, right before going to bed, everything, blue light just before bed, and it's horrific. And then when that happened with New York, I was like, here we go. This is the road drill to the roadmap to martial law, to removal of civil liberties and everything else that obviously you and I know goes along with that. But for you, what was the day or the moment? Because I think from what I understand, because I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts, and I think I handled it a lot worse than you did. Definitely.
Yeah.
So what for you was the moment when you were like, this is definitely full steam ahead now?
I think I've got like I've mentioned before, I think one of my superpowers is being able to know all this stuff and not bothering me, just getting on with my life.
Yeah.
It's like you create your own reality. That's what I say. Like you create your own income, you create your own economy, and you're stepping into energy. And just being like, I've been talking about this for a long time. I was expecting it to come, and I was just going to say, like, throughout humanity, these things have always happened, and humanity has always found a way around it. Unfortunately, some people, don't, and etc. But the people that have seen it coming, it's like I always say, if anyone wants to understand what it's like, go and watch the film The Big Short. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a hell of a film. It's about the.
Oh, was that the collapse of the 2008?
Yeah.
Am I right? Is that the Brad Pitt one?
Yeah, housing market. Yeah.
Yeah, housing market collapse. Yeah.
Yeah, and it said like, and where the whole world, it said like, when the whole world was just, a few weirdos, yeah, and a few like inclusives, or a few like people knew what was going on, and the rest of the world didn't, and everyone laughed at them, and he was called Chicken Little for 2 years because he thought the sky was falling, and I was just like, I know this is coming, I've seen it, everything. I mean, it was really because my first mentor when I got into this, like it was. Someone asked me this question when we first started, about 2 years ago into this. I've been talking about this for a while, like it was coming. And I was like, well, to understand health, you need to understand nutrition. Just one aspect of it, nutrition. To understand nutrition, you need to understand farming. Understand farming, you need to understand soil science and the chemicals they're using them. Then you need to understand the companies that make these chemicals, and then the people that run those companies. Then it starts going deeper and deeper. And it's like, well, big agro, big tech, big telecom, all these big industry. And so for me, it's just like, I was like, right, this is happening. People have always found a way, I will. And yeah,
I think that's a brilliant mindset. I wished I'd had it because I'm very much of that mindset now. But for me, I think one of the problems I had, and I don't know how this relates to what you were going through in your mindset, but one of my biggest problems was probably like yourself, being quite empathic in terms of caring about other people when, I have, tended to put other people first in terms of make sure they're okay, and then actually stress myself out to higher heaven. So that wasn't a superpower of mine to stop that from happening. But I was most concerned about all the people that would follow the propaganda and that would believe it and continue to believe it. And beyond that, I already knew, I mean, like you probably did as well, as soon as the hammer dropped on the lockdown, I could see them lining up for their injections. I knew the background to the industry. I knew how incalculably fraudulent it is and how they get away with these, tens of billions of pounds worth of fines, and how this was going to be no different, and how it perfectly aligned with the telecoms agenda, with the New World Order agenda, with the agricultural sustainable development agenda. So then that was going to merge into climate change. And so I really struggled to think, how do I communicate that to people to prepare them so that they don't go and take it, they effectively, metaphorically, don't jump off the bridge. And so I was waking up every day and I was like posting on Instagram and Facebook and getting called crazy and you are mad. I mean, I remember when I was with people about the passports and things like that and what that actually means. Because I suppose the cleverness of what do we want to call them, the cabal or the elites, the genius is in the simplicity of a very complex plan and how they manage to unfold it just at the right time, just to get people, the slow creep towards totalitarianism.
They're in tiptoes, like.
Yeah, the totalitarian tiptoe, that one. So I really struggled with that, especially I had friends in foreign countries and I was ringing them, I was speaking to them and I was like, you realize what's coming. And in one breath, I was saying, this is all about, under the veil of biosecurity and effectively entering the body and this transhumanist agenda. Well, that's too much for somebody to take who thinks that there's a bug going around and they just got to stay indoors for a couple of weeks. And a lot of people, they didn't want to listen. So they were like, oh no, it's fine. It's fine. Just go and enjoy yourself and go and have a gin and tonic and go and have, go and have some fun or whatever. And I found that probably the most difficult part. And then watching people do it and actually getting many of the people that I begged not to, based on the fact that I'm not a scientist, although you can go down that road in terms of whose science you believe. And, so you're not a scientist, you hand them this scientist, they go, well, not that one. And, we've been there so many times. And they were coming back to me with with a blood clot. I've cerebral thrombosis, stroke, paralysis down one side of the arm, miscarriage, stillbirth. You name it, birth defect, blindness as well, peripheral neuropathy, the mist. I mean, you've probably seen that. Is it 16 pages of the Pfizer adverse events or adverse reactions that they've written out that got released I think it's about 4 days ago or something like that. So it's very difficult to read that. So I don't know, but you did okay with that, and were you just at peace, I guess, in terms of what will be, and just make plans to make sure that everything's okay?
I wasn't it wasn't at peace. I was like, I was putting up like so many articles and videos and doing anything. And the thing, because I've been saying this stuff for a while, I didn't, some people I lost, but other people were just like, well, Ryan's been saying this for a long time. And you sort of like, oh, all right. And so, no, it was, when it comes to that, I mean, with the side effects or, the side effects of that, I mean, every single one of them has over 400 adverse effects listed. Yeah. Everything from allergy to death. And so when it comes to this, and it's not even, it's an experimental 108 days to give it the okay. And then they want 75 years to release the data. And so,
how did you know that? Really, I think the word experimental bugs me a lot, because to me, when you tell somebody that's an experimental therapy or even experimental gene therapy, the word therapy and the word experimental, it almost leads you to believe that there's a genuinely positive expected outcome.
Yeah.
Whereas I postulate that both of us think we both knew that it was never an experiment. There was an experiment of which they knew the outcome. Potentially within the experiment, I suppose, when you look at the batch numbers, and I think there's mounting that there were 3 different batches that were going out, and it's impossible for me to know exactly where those batches went, but that kind of explained why you had a huge amount of people that were coming back and saying that I've got zero side effects, I'm absolutely fine. So that really appealed to the kind of the almost blasé attitude of sort of, well, in England, the lads culture, it's like, I'm absolutely fine, take it for the team, get back on it. We're doing it whatever else is going on holiday, whatever. And then there was the other batch that had something in it. And then there was the one that had a high lethality. And I forgot to say there, I had some point to make, Brian.
Right now, probably saying that when it comes to the different batches, there was definitely a placebo. And I think they did it on like more middle class areas, probably people they don't see as like, what they call them bottom feeders, basically like useless excuses eaters or whatever. And so then these are the wise people, the people that I went to school with, all the private school people who think that they're intelligent, and they've been programmed to be a good little slave. Then the bell rings, you go to class. And, I always say this, everyone, out of all my people didn't go to states, they went to state school. Most of them have got their own business. All my private school guys, I think I'm the only one who has their own business, because they're not taught how to have their own business, and they're just taught to be like a middle management and just listen to what, the man says. And, it's just like crazy. And a lot of them, luckily I've had about 4 or 5 my close friends who have been following my work for forever, and they really trust what I do. And so I had people I could talk to about this, and it was like, okay, but a lot of them just went off the deep end for at least like half a year. Some of them are much more awake now, because I find it just like how you can't be awake now. You've literally got to be like half brain dead or just in perpetual fear. That's the thing, like, which they do, well, they're very good at that. They're very good at fear, then changing the narrative, changing the narrative. Oh, this comes up, that they switch it, they switch it all the time.
It's just mass confusion, isn't it? I mean, I guess, for somebody like me who's followed various pharmaceuticals, big agriculture, big telecom, those kind of industries for the last, 50, well, probably 13, 14 years, but it's even for me, it's very, very confusing. Now,
how old are you, Rory?
I'm 43.
43, okay. And so you got into this 15 years ago?
No. So I understood that there was something fundamentally wrong with the world when I was about 28, 29. And I had a phone conversation with a friend of mine who was heavily into this, or is very heavily into this. He was asking me when I was a 28-year-old lad, he was, I was pretty much just interested in drinking beer and eating whatever I could get my hands on. And he said, "Oh, you do know who the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds are?" And I was like, "No." I mean, he said, "The banking families that rule the world, or at least in part rule the world, or visibly, so speaking." I've always been really inquisitive. So I sort of, this was back in the day when Google wasn't so heavily censored, obviously. This was before.
Engine, yeah.
What, sorry? Yeah, it worked as a search.
Search engine, yeah.
And so I went onto Google, and I was like, "Oh my God, these guys are running medicine, and they're running educational policies, and they're running all this stuff." And I was like, "Wow." And they run and this, and then I started going to the Federal Reserve and everything. And that I sort of had that in a mellow background to just everyday life. So I was kind of interested in what was going on. I learned about the chemtrails and things like that. And it was when I was 36. So that'll be 2016, I believe. Essentially what happened was my Labrador suffered what I now believe, I can't prove this, but I now believe he ingested poison. I'd taken him, there was some heavy flooding going on in my hometown. And I'd taken him for a sort of a randomly different walk around the back of a sports ground, by some indoor tennis courts. And I believe there was I believe it's called bromethylene. I mean, I could be wrong here. And I'm not saying this categorically, but all of his symptoms matched that. However, I didn't know that at the time, and I took him to the vets, and they gave him XYZ injection. There was no mention of activated charcoal or anything that would have cleansed his stomach. And he got worse and worse, and he died inside of about 40 hours. So that's kind of like, so then and it was it was the beginning of, sort of middle of winter. So it was like back in the 19th of January, 2016. So then I went through a huge depression, which is difficult to explain, because obviously I know people who've lost parents, and I've lost family members and friends through death. And I was absolutely wiped out when this dog died. The man, he had fits and seizures and bleeding and all the rest of it. And then I paid the vet to.
It's so funny. I want you to just as you're saying that, dog has been crying at the door. She can hear your story.
Oh, wow.
She's like, "Do you want to come in?" And I was just saying, it's funny how energy works. He said you paid the vet and you went down, did all the.
Yeah. So I was just at a loss, and the vets had basically said, "Oh, it must have been a brain tumor." And I was naive, to say the least. And I just believed it, because obviously that's what you do. You go to the vets, and, we could talk all night about how that's the general thing that people do in the Western world. We pedestal medicine and vets, and I had no reason to disbelieve them, although it didn't make any sense, because I was thinking brain cancer. Well, why did he not displaying symptoms of that? Why was it so sudden? And I spoke to my friend who actually got me onto the whole nutrition thing years before, or who was very interested in it. And he said, that's a brain tumor. He was the first one to say it. And I started looking it up, and I was feverish, and I was just, brain tumor. I was like, yeah, fits, seizures, bleeding through the nostrils. That's not brain tumor. Sorry, that's poison ingestion, I meant to say. And it could have been, if he'd had activated charcoal within a certain time frame, that could have saved him, or bentonite clay, or the diatomaceous earth or something. And I was like, Jesus, how is this possible? Anyway, about 2 weeks later, some friends of mine had a dog with terminal cancer, quote unquote, and they rung me up, and they had many dogs, and they were going on holiday, and they wanted to put their dog to sleep, and they gave me this dog to put to sleep to go and take to the same vet that I now believed. And actually, I don't want to be done for liable here, but I'm just giving, this is just a belief that they, in part, let's say they didn't, I would have preferred them to have given him a different treatment, let's just say. So, but the same vet anyway, back to them. And so I was like, still devastated about my dog, but I thought, okay, I'll take your dog to the vets. They're good family friends or whatever. And I won't question why you're going on holiday when your dog's dying, because that's another story. And I went to pick up the dog, and this was a pivotal moment for me. So this was the day my life changed. So I went to pick up the dog, and on the side of the kitchen countertop was Salyu dog meat in a tin type thing. And it was left out with and I'm not having to go at these people or anything. It just
Thinks.
That's horrendous. Yeah. So anyway, so I found the tip, and then he also had Baker's dry mix, which is like cancer. It's like cancer in a pellet, basically.
It's like the dog's version of Eshore.
Yeah, it is. And it's or worse than McDonald's, or at least on the same level. But he had esophageal cancer. And then it spread to his lymphatic system. And apparently, I never saw the scans, but apparently he was riddled with it. And he was shallow breathing, and he was foaming at the mouth. He had red eyes, and he was on Metacam and Tramadol to alleviate the pain and the inflammation. Right. And so I took him to my house, and I just sat there with him, and I looked at him, and I was like, I know something about this, because one of my best mates reversed his mother's terminal breast cancer about 15 years ago using diet and nutrition. And I think she was given a few months to live. And, 15 years later.
Well, by law, you can't say that. Chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery. Just to let you know.
Yeah. So let's say she's still with us. And what can we say, actually? Can we say that
her body healed itself whilst it was the right
and environment?
Yeah.
So anyway,
they call it miraculous recovery in the medical field.
Spontaneous remission, isn't it?
Yeah.
Spontaneously remitted. Anyway, so I tried, I won't go into too much detail, but basically I got some natural compounds which involved the curcumin and black seed oil and even lemon juice and apple cider vinegar and good old black pepper, and what else? Then put sodium bicarbonate, because I was looking into the metabolic theory of cancer. I just started Googling stuff, and I started looking on YouTube, and this stuff hadn't been thrown off YouTube at that time.
Yeah.
So I found it fascinating. I actually found a Russian guy healing a horse of cancer with, spontaneous remission of a horse using herbs and various things.
So that's Huxley. That's Huxley. I don't know if you've seen
it. Was it Huxley or Huxley?
Huxley
something.
Yeah, sorry, Huxley Cancer Clinics, where they found the horse that was having cancer. It was starting to eat all the dandelion, and it was starting to eat all the milk.
Yeah,
and
he
was the one who was actually the only person to ever beat the AMA in court, because he had so much money from oil, he could put them to bed.
Yeah. I remember watching that before it got censored. So anyway, I made this dog a tonic. And I see that the reason is because I was looking at Metacam and Tramadol, read up on the side effects. It was the first thing I did. Looked at the fact that cancer was a disease of a weakened immune system, theoretically. Obviously, we know it's a disease of, not enough chemotherapeutics or radiation. But theoretically, there was a hypothesis that said it might be a disease of a weakened immune system. So I decided that Metacam and Tramadol obviously would compromise his ability to transport nutrients. It would deplete his liver function and his renal function. So I gave him these things, but it wasn't scientific about it. I just did it by eye. I was just it was just an intuitive thing. And I diluted this liquid into a syringe because he couldn't swallow. And I squirted it down his mouth, this sheepdog, gave him a little bit of an orange beard and had no idea what I was doing. But my logic was that he was supposed to be going to sleep anyway. And I don't think I could do any worse than that. So anyway, I also got some raw meat. So I threw the food away. I never actually took the food from his house. Got some raw organic meat, and he managed to eat a couple of pieces of it, just tiny, tiny little pieces of it. That night I gave him two doses of this liquid. And then the following, which I suppose you could even call like a variation of golden paste now. But the following morning I went downstairs and his red eyes had got 90% whiter, if not 95% whiter, which just blew me away. The foam that was coming out of his mouth and dribbling down his chin had gone. There was no more foaming at the mouth, and he wagged his tail for the first time. And he actually started mooching around the living room. And I told my mum, and my mum was like, don't be ridiculous. You can't reverse or heal an animal like that. And I was like, well, I'm sure going to find out. On the second day, he was eating a good handful of meat. Now, I don't think he'd eaten in 8 days. I think it'd been a good over a week since he had anything to eat. He'd had no nutrition his entire life. He was also stressed because he was with 3 other sheepdogs. So that's obviously going to impact his adrenal function and his blood pressure, and it's going to cause inflammation in the gut, etc. So I took him for a walk, and on the second evening of the second day, he was kind of countering, this is a dog that I had to carry out of my car. So I'm not saying that, of course, I'm not saying that all the tumors had disappeared overnight, but it was unbelievable to watch, almost to the point where often when I've just met somebody, I'll kind of withhold the speed or the rapidness of how quickly that actually happened. But on the 4th day, I took him to my mother's house. And he started barking, and he hadn't barked in about 7 or 8 months. And he was barking and jumping up and down and wagging his tail. On the 7th day, when his owners came back, he was running up and down their sofas. I mean, he was an 8-year-old dog, but we're talking an 8-year-old dog that was supposed to be in a casket. And so from that moment on, I suffered from all these autoimmune conditions. And I was like, oh my God, right. So I started following probably much of the same things that you've been looking into for a long time. And I just was like, look, I'm going to start eliminating things from my diet. I actually accidentally did a ketogenic diet, but it was full kind of anti-cancer, phytonutrient rich, enzyme, live food, everything organic. And my body had never had that kind of experience before. And inside of about 12 days, literally every problem that I had evaporated. I'm not saying that everybody that does that on a ketogenic style diet will experience that, but that was my experience. My eyesight even improved. Insomnia, depression, anxiety, all the pain that I'd suffered. I had a torn rotator cuff, which I'd done on a pet deck when I was 15. And it was the first time so that would have been 20 years. And suddenly like my shoulder moved back.
Was you doing raw meats, raw egg?
No, I wasn't at the time. I was just doing organic. It was relatively simple. I'd do a huge salad bowl with everything in it. We're talking like raw onions and grated courgette, grated carrot, raw grated cabbage, not too many, but quite, some tomatoes and things like that. And then I was cooking in coconut oil. I wouldn't touch anything that wasn't organic. I started filtering my water, which I hadn't done previously. And then I started adding iodine and I started taking this turmeric-based tonic as well, which I found great alleviation. And I know there's a lot of people that was, there's so many different opinions, even in the independent sort of holistic health world, where somebody will say, well, don't take apple cider vinegar because then that's kind of acidifying. And then other people will say, well, that can prevent reflux because you're actually, you could be weak in stomach acid. And I was mixing all these things together, and I was doing honey with bicarbonate of soda, which was the Maslow Brzezinski, I believe. He was the Eastern European chap that, now you were talking about Huxley, and I think Brzezinski, he was taken to court more times than any other doctor, or something to do with the FDA for this sodium bicarbonate therapy, which was incredibly effective on lymph node cancers, especially when injected locally. But I was just whacking that into the mix and playing around with tonics. Inside of 13, 12 days, all of my aches and pains, what you would have said was early onset rheumatoid arthritis had disappeared, isolated, improved.
So you had a lot of joint pain, not inflammation.
Yeah, now I look back, I'm like, that's so obvious. But then at the same time,
No,
it really made
you don't know what you don't know. You just so
right.
yeah.
And that became the mission then after that. As soon as that happened, I was like, how many other people don't know about this? Because originally I was like, okay, so we've got the cancer industry. And I'd wrap my head around that. But then I was like, well, what else is there? And then I was realizing that, you've got and pretty much every ology and gastrointestinal and unnecessary orthopedic surgery, knee replacements that necessarily needn't have to happen. You've got, problems with cardiovascular that could be prevented. And there's this figure, I think they say 85% or 86% of diseases are lifestyle preventative. But I think it's probably higher, to be honest with you. And
I think what the old head of the old Surgeon General in America, I can't remember his name. He actually come out on TV and said 98% of these issues are lifestyle and diet related. The next day they fired him. They fired him the next day. I can't remember who he is.
tend to do that, don't they?
Yeah, and he was on. The diet and lifestyle. As you know, I mean, please, because people are programmed just to eat. It's get up in the morning, you have cereal with milk, and then you have a sandwich, and then you have pasta for dinner or whatever. It's just what people do because they've been programmed to do it. And it's not like people. I was the same. My mum and dad did the same. My mum always cooked food and stuff, but we had like cereals and breads and
we did
pastas and stuff. And she wasn't trying to hurt me. She didn't know. She just followed what she was told, and like everyone else. And when you look back through history and all these tribes and digital schools that never even have the name for disease because they didn't ever have it, like Western Aid Price's work, for example, didn't even have a name for cancer because they never even come across it. No, all of them are lean, healthy, happy. Only start to get malformation of like the jaw or the teeth when they start to have white man's food, And so and it's like, when you go into it, and there's so many different, as you're right, there's so many different theories in our, even in natural health world that have this or don't have that. And, certain compounds, but I look at it like, obviously everyone's unique, everyone's individual, everyone's going for their own stressors, but also certain foods that are there to cleanse and to clear, not the same ones that are there to build and to know. And there's just, but it also depends on your own chemistry. Exactly. So, but just take it. I don't know if you know my story. They almost destroyed me for 5 years. That's why I do what I do. I had terrible.
I wanted to ask you. I wanted to look it up, and then I thought I'd want to ask him. So what happened to you?
Yeah, no. So I'll give you the cliff notes because, it's like,
it's so long.
A bit long, but when I was like 15, 16, I started getting quite bad acne, like my face and then my chest and my back. Yeah. My best friend died when he was 17, and it sort of pushed my body into like emotional, chemical, physical response. And the acne started getting really, really bad to the point of I was getting come through chest, back, and it started to blister and bleed. And then, so they put me on medication, which didn't do anything. And I started to get this thing called keloid scarring, which is where keloid scarring, it's where the overheals, the body overheals because it's in so much stress. And so I was getting all rubbery nodules all across my chest and back. They gave me, once again, they put me on Accutane, which if I know now, so I know then, I would never have done it. Vitamin A derivative, 100% chance of birth defect for women, go in the sun and you get burned. Put me on that. But then I started to get these cysts that were coming up in my groin and my just increased my butt. And it was got to the point where I had to wear 2 shirts because I was bleeding from my shirt. I used to play like rugby at a good level, like pro rugby. And it was getting to the point where I couldn't run. And I was having all the things that they told me to do, the protein shakes, but I was also taking the medication, steroids, and they started giving me, steroid tablets because nothing was working, which got rid of my cysts for a little bit. But since I come off them, they come back. Also blew me up to like 98 kg. I was blotchy and red. And they started giving me steroid injections in my chest and back for my keloid. And then that didn't heal it. So I had to go, they put me under the surgery to cut my cysts out, which everything was good for like 6-7 weeks. And then things come back again. So they put me for another surgery to cut it out. And it was all good until it wasn't. And, I was just sitting on the couch, complete shell of a man, like fat, overweight, in pain. I was on tramadol and all that as well for the pain.
Yeah.
And I'd listen to the doctors, the specialists, quote unquote, and a dermatologist. If I saw him now, I don't know what I'd do to him. Like, 250, £250 a time, like 60 to 100 injections in my chest and back for steroids. And yeah, I was on the couch watching, I've mentioned this before, watching boxing because the only thing I could do was watch sport all the time. And David Hay, who's actually here, I saw him in the gym the other day. Yeah, he knows. He's not stupid.
Yeah.
So he was fighting value for the heavyweight title of the world. and they had a show called Behind the Ropes, which documents their training. And on that, I was watching it, and on that, he had his nutritionist. He's also like his coach for everything, really, strength conditioning coach, nutritionist, health coach. And he was talking about like cleansing the body. He was talking about organic foods and probiotic rich liquids. He was talking about, ways cutting out certain foods because they inflame the body. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? I need to speak to him. This is a different approach. His name is Ruben Tabares, and he's now a close friend. And, I searched him, was like, right, I need to find this guy. I sent him his company an email. They said, oh, we'll get him we'll send the message to him, and he'll be in contact in maybe the next week or so. He read my message, and he phoned me up within 2 hours and was like, I wanted to speak to you because come and see me tomorrow. I think it cost me like £350 to go and see him at the time for like an hour. Best money I've ever spent in my life. And he just opened my eyes to a world I didn't know existed. Like told me about what was going on, how I was inflamed, how I was toxic, how I had like overgrowth of candida because of other things. I had mercury poisoning. The candida was there for that. Sent me to go to
mercury poisoning, was that through amalgams or?
So that was from my mum has a mouthful of them, and it come down. I remember saying, so he sent me to this biological doctor that I use now just to test in certain ways and certain things, homeopathic remedies as well. I said to him, how comes I got ill? How comes I did 17 years without getting ill? And now I still use to people. He said, it's like blowing up a balloon. You keep on blowing it up. One day, eventually it will burst. We've all got a toxic threshold. And once it goes over, that was it. And so he found like I had heavy metal poisoning, and I had remnants of all the different vaccines that I had in me as well.
So the metal poisoning was from your mother, from when you were conceived, when you were born.
Yeah. So what people don't know is that the firstborn of any mother has like majority of her toxins put in.
Wow, you know that.
Yeah. So, and that's why the firstborn can if they haven't got a strong constitution, can be problems, and it's why babies get ill. Obviously it's other things like things they get injected with, but babies can get ill because they get the mother's toxins. So they get, and so that was one of the things. She had a whole mouth of them, but she didn't know. Like, mum was no, she was just doing what they told her to do, and yeah, but Rory, it was the worst time of my life. But in retrospect, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Because if I didn't for it, I would be like everyone else, and that just opened my eyes. And I was like, Ruben was like, I studied with him for the next 3 years. I went around and also learned with other people, and he'd just be like, watch this, look into this. And I was just looking into it, and you just keep on going down the rabbit hole. And you're like, into like AIDS and Dr. Robert Wilner talking about the deadly deception, and the same stuff they've done with this, AIDS didn't kill people, AZT did. And it just goes on, and it's just.
Yeah. I mean, it's insane, isn't it? When you actually try and piece it all together. I mean, I think the hardest thing is the more that you know, then the more difficult it is to talk to somebody who has no experience in it. Or, I mean, they're so good at covering their tracks, aren't they? I don't know how, because to me, they don't cover the tracks. It's really obvious. But, when you talk to somebody who's maybe suffering from cancer or, somebody, a friend of a friend or a family member of a friend, and they say, yeah, they're about to do their chemo or whatever. And you're just like, you're in this you're in this horrible rock and a hard place where you can't, it's almost like not worth to say anything, because I already know what that wall, that impenetrable wall of emotional response is going to be like, because it's so evocative and it's so deeply embedded into everybody's psyche as to what to do that, I mean, the obvious answer would be, I think I'm going to trust an oncologist of 40 years. An oncologist who's been doing it for 40 years over somebody who's basically, not a qualified oncologist. And you can sympathize with that outlook, but then that then takes you back to trying to explain where the origins of allopathic medicine come from. And it becomes a much longer conversation. And it's hard. I found that very stressful when I first learned what I learned, to actually digest that night on night. Some people would listen, some people wouldn't.
I was going to say, some people listen, but no one's more self-righteous than the newly converted, right? So you try to tell everyone, but then you sort of get to the point and say, like, there's a good analogy that Peter Crone once used, the mind architect. And he said, when you get these situations, rather than just like, he said, even if you imagine you can't come up to your friend's house or someone's house, and you had better furniture than them, and you just knocked on the door and you just rushed into their house, took out their old furniture and put the new one in. And they'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? And you'd be like, well, I'm just giving you better furniture. But like, I didn't ask you to. Yeah. Whereas if you knock on the door and say, by the way, I've got this furniture here. It's really brand new. Would you like to have a look at it? See what you think? They'll say, oh yeah, why not? And you go, and it's just like framing it that way. I've got a suggestion. Do you mind? But something you tapped on earlier, I just want to hold that thought. Something you tapped on earlier, which is really good. You said good used to be a search engine, and it did. And they're very, very clever with what they did. All these platforms, Google, YouTube, Facebook, they got everyone on for 5, 10 years. Don't to trust them.
Yeah.
Once everyone was on them, they've even got a term for it. Google it. 95% of the people use Google, you know, Google or Google Chrome, Google it. Fucking, they've got that now. They've got everyone on there. And then like we even built our businesses on there. And then when they wanted to spark you off and go, look, we don't agree with this, boom, burn the books. They're very, very clever, strategic, what they do.
I think definitely, and in it for the long game. You know, it's not it's not even a 2-year agenda, is this? It's as we know, it's just gone back from the dawn of time, and it's just utilizing technology in different ways of book burning. And they know, I mean, it's like they responsible for the predictive programming that we're experiencing. And so, you know, we already know what kind of opposition that if you're trying to help somebody and say, have you looked into this, what X, Y, Z? And even just down to the word conspiracy theorist, which I find that the most boring terminology for somebody who thinks outside of the box. But they're already armed. You know, people have been given these buzzwords that they paraphrase from the media, from the news. They don't even realize they're doing it. A bit like I was thinking a while ago, about the whole overpopulation thing. Well, the fact that you get everybody on the entire population of the earth would fit into Australia, I think it is, and they could each have an acre, and you'd still have the rest.
Texas, yeah, as well.
Yeah, Texas as well. Texas, you wouldn't have an acre. I don't know. Maybe that's true. Well, yeah, either or. But you get, and obviously you've got people that are rammed into cities, and they don't ram you into a city, do they? They entice people. There's always this nudge. It's like when you read the lockstep agenda, and it's like, okay, they're going to overtake the agricultural policies. They're going to have 5G run farms in the countryside. And we're going to get everybody out of the countryside. And we're going to put them all into a smart city. They're not actually going to come around and point a gun at you and tell you to get in a smart city. They'll just diminish your bank account so much through taxation, through the cost of living expenses, through hyperinflation of goods and services. And then they'll say, actually, you can have a nice 3-bedroom apartment in the city, and it's going to be half the rent that you're paying us now to rent your house back off us. You know, there'll be some sorts of clever ways of getting people to do what they want them to do. It's like they don't suddenly say, we're going to get you to eat these, I don't know what they're like, these witchetty grub sandwiches that are genetically engineered in a laboratory. They will gradually, they infiltrate the vegan movement. Who's going to argue with the vegan movement? Well, I respect the ethics of a vegan. I can't be a vegan. I've tried to do it. It didn't work for me very well. But ethically, I respect it. I love animals, and I would never really draw swords with a vegan, because I really do admire what they're doing. But there is a level of naivety within the vegan movement where they don't realize they're being played, much in the same way as what was it when they tried to get women to do both parents would, the feminist movement is the word I was looking for. And they infiltrated that, and it was just a high taxation, and it's a high, to steal more money off the masses. And that's kind of what they're doing with the vegan movement. They're infiltrating them, and they're seeding the idea that meat is, a corrosive thing to be having in our environment or to be ingesting, and actually it's going to affect the carbon emissions. And so then that's coming into your social credit score. So there's all these different vectors that are all coming in from this huge link wheel of complete fuckery. And if you don't see the bigger picture, like I'm sure you know, if you don't see the bigger picture, you only see that, maybe somebody has 2 pieces of the puzzle. It will just go past them like that, and they won't realize what's actually the bigger picture, and much less won't be able to foresee or project forward what will happen to them in the future. And so people go along with it. And then, of course, without even realizing that, so we're overpopulated, we need to eat less meat, we need to have meat-free protein. And then, stage enter, Bill Gates or whoever to produce
anything back with that.
This Frankenstein food, and people will lap it up. Because you always think, well, they won't, but they bloody do. They just lap it. I mean, they lap up lockdown. I met so many people that said, oh, I love lockdown, it's amazing. Like, oh, I was on furlough, I was getting all this money. I was like, where do you think the money's coming from? They're like, oh, I know, cat. I'm like, yeah, but your pub's shut, and that's probably going to go out of business. And if it doesn't, it's any matter of time if you allow this to continue. And it was incredible to watch, actually. It's been an incredible movie to be part of.
Yeah, no, it's when it comes to that, like the vegan agenda. You said you wouldn't draw swords with them. It's like, I understand, because most of the things we definitely agree on, but it's just
Yeah.
when you see like a lot of I've had people come at me for what I say, and then a year later, 2 years later, Ryan, I'm so sorry. Like I was really ill. I started eating meat again, and my life changed. I'm like, no problem. Like, you're welcome. It's a lot of the high profile vegans like Tim Sheaf. He started eating meat again because he couldn't get well.
I don't know.
His life
Yeah.
changed. Yeah, and it's like one of those things that I get it. And what's it like? Cowspiracy, cows create as much pollution as cars. It's like, I think someone
Vegan.
kind of all read this. They said, I tell you what, I'll sleep in my garage with a cow all night, and
You sleep in your orange, really.
yeah, go to sleep with your car engine, and we'll see which one who wakes up. And that's the thing. It's like, and when they don't understand how the monocropping is destroying the land, stripping it of the topsoil, which is it's killing so many more animals. It's just corrosive to them, and animals like Joe Salatin shows at Polyface Farm. The way that them being there helps the ecosystem. It's like they put the wolves back into Yellowstone Park. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I don't know if you've seen that. They put Yellowstone and Yosemite Park, one of them. They put the wolves back in there, and it literally led all these, like, basically because the wolves went there, the deer that were just massacring their land, they wouldn't be in certain areas anymore. So that allowed for the grass and the trees to grow. The grass.
Remember this? Yeah.
Yeah, it meant that the bird would come in, and then because there'd be more rodents on the floor, the birds could feed, and then that meant they could be in certain areas, and it allowed for the rivers to start to flow, and it changed the whole landscape and that's what happens with the animals in the ecosystem. If you don't allow them to farm, we rewilding or just being in the wild, them being there allows the ecosystem to change. Otherwise, that's why people have to cull certain animals, because otherwise they'll just run amok. The apex predators, they won't die, and then the whole system is gone. So, when it comes to that, I understand where the vegans are coming from, animal cruelty. I'm against CAFOs and careful farming all the time. It's why we get like wild caught or grass fed, and farmers that do things the right way. But, death is a part of life. And if you look into it at a deeper level, it's like you're upgrading their consciousness. It's why everyone prayed over their meals. They're saying, very much for giving your life so I can be the healthiest version of myself in better terms. And, I've tried it as well, mate, for six months. The first 3, I felt good because my body was cleansing. The last 3, about 6-7 months, I started couldn't get, basically, my libido went. I started to get bad breath. I started to I had no energy. I couldn't think clearly, and I see people, the other thing that people dive into this so much for as well, Rory, is because people used to have a family unit or a community to buy into, and that would be who they belong to. Now they've destroyed that with the family unit. You said before, the feminist movement and all this transgender movement, and people are so longing to belong that they'll just jump into something like veganism, and it becomes who they are. Girl, vegan girl, or whatever is their handle. And they're so lost that they want to join a community, and they'll even sacrifice their own health to be part of it. That's how lost people are. And that's just like, it's a shame. And it's why I do talks like this. And I say to people, like, reach out to people, get on. There's one thing this thing has done is, when I was 2-3 years ago, I could always work from anywhere because my stuff's online, but I only went away when my friends could go away. But this thing happened, and we got together a group on Facebook called Plan B, finding someone that would be open. And we went out, and we made like 20 of us made friends. We lived in Mexico, and then from that we went different places, and we met other people on this journey, and we've met people that are now part of our tribe, and so it's allowed us to expand. So in one way, it's been terrible what they're doing, and 100% what they're trying to push through is terrible, but it's allowed me and other people, and for you to make new connections and have people who are aware, so we can make communities down the line. So for one of the reasons I'm doing different places is because I want to see somewhere that I could live. I feel like I could live long term. And I'll be like, right, guys, we're putting up here. Who else wants to buy land on this bit here? And we can have a community of people. Because if there's a community of people, it's hard for them to try and do anything. It's because we're so broken. There's no like the family unit to be so strong, or like he's trying to take someone over, trying to conquer someone. And now everyone's so like, mums are working 2 jobs, huge water, just trying to make ends meet. They can't even think about this stuff because they're so busy just trying to survive.
So fragmented, isn't it? And I think that, it's only when you take a step take a step back and you look at the way society runs, which is literally like working 9 to 5, 9 to 6, coming back, ready meal in the oven, watching, pre-programmed entertainment television, weekends, getting drunk, rinse, repeat. And when you actually take a step back and what is it? I mean, I think for me, it was when I first started looking into the inception of the Federal Reserve in, I think it was 1913. And I was looking on, I think it's Edward G. Griffin or G. Edward Griffin. I always get that the wrong way around. But I was listening to him and I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And in fact, he was on The Truth About Cancer. I think that's where I found it. And then I started to look into that the financial side of it. And I was like, fractional reserve banking. Well, that doesn't make sense. See, that's theft, isn't it? And then you go into the whole taxation system and you go, oh my God, the whole it's all theft. It's all, whether it's thieving your money or it's thieving your energy or it's thieving your psychology or it's really a shame. And then you go, are they human? I struggle to even think that the people that are actually pulling the strings are even human. Not that I have any evidence to suggest any of that, but it's definitely difficult to understand why they're doing what they're doing, because we could have such a great life. I mean, the fact that you and I are talking about building communities outside of the system, whereas, I'm just sort of a standard sort of middle class, went to school, went to university. I did end up doing an unusual fashion modeling, which is an unusual career, which was kind of accidental, which gave me a lot of time to read and like self-awareness and things like that. But essentially, I'm just like a normal guy from a suburban town talking about stuff that a few decades ago would be within the confines of like the hippie movement. I think that's never going to be it. I was conventional, and then suddenly I'm like, well, fuck, I can't hang around in this system because it's broken.
Well, but this is the way, like, even meeting each other through that. So now you've got, have we spoken as well? So now you've got, and some people you just click with and you're just like, okay, anything like that, on down, meet up, you've got someone that you can just message or have friends with, because that's what this is done as well. It's allowed, because certain people, we always have certain friendships, no matter what goes on. They might not be in the same vibration as you, but you'll just be friends with them. So you need to have connections with people that are on this journey with you, because otherwise it's a lonely world, right? And so it's like with these communities, people, that's one of the things you do. You get that sense of, people pulling together, which is good, and meeting people, and even having, it's made so many good connections like this, Rory, as well. People that are open-minded and understanding what's going on. And as you said, most people, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, come back, watch it. It's actually, what's that film they did? Well, the little cartoon film there. Everyone's just sitting in their couch, sitting in their own chair, feeding themselves to death, watching the screen. I can't remember.
Pretty much every cartoon.
Yeah.
Is it Family Guy or something like that? Or
I think it might be called Wall-E or something like that, the film. And it was about like looking to the future. And you look at people, how much we've progressed. You see pictures from the 1970s, Rory. No one was overweight. Now you're like, you're one out if you're in good shape. It's.
I mean, I was thinking about that because I was listening just randomly. I was walking the dog and I don't normally take my phone with me, but I did this afternoon and I just randomly flicked through. I was like, just have a look at Ryan's podcast. And like, because you've done quite a lot, and I flicked on, it landed on Dan Furlong, and you were talking about that on that particular podcast. And I was just thinking this afternoon about how when I was younger, so when I was doing fashion modeling, I didn't know how to lose weight. So I just thought I was genetically biased to be overweight, because it can't be what I'm eating, because I'll try and stop it. So I went through this whole, and obviously the ketogenic diet was the first time when I realized that actually your body is intelligent, and it's amazing the lies that are spun, because then that lifts the veil on everything. Your Herbalife, Slimming World, Weight Watchers, totally ineffective. That doesn't mean that somebody can't. Yeah, for sure. If you restrict calories and have some crazy treat party on a Friday night where you're allowed 100 calories of chocolate or whatever, you will lose weight. And then we're going into this argument of sustainability in terms of weight loss. But for me, I was like, I didn't even know what fasting, like intermittent fasting was. So to suddenly see my body change and this midriff that would never ever disappear. And what I used to do with in modeling was, I'd have a shoot and they'd give me like, if I was lucky, I might get a 5-day week heads up.
So how?
And I would.
So Rory, 5-day week heads up. Keep that thought. How old was you?
So I started when I was 21.
Right.
And I would work for German catalogs and things, and they would go, "Hey, Rory, the client is saying, a really good model, but the client is saying he's a little bit overweight, and he's not saying this in such a nice way, Ryan. you know, and so it was a problem. And I could slim down by starving myself, and I'd become a nervous wreck. So I was like, why am I depressed and anxious? You know, and I can't sleep and I've got insomnia. And I remember waking up in hotel rooms and going to the minibar and eating, do you know those little Ritter Sport chocolate bars?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, no, minibar thing. I just eat like, because my blood sugars were all over the place. I'd literally so many different problems. And I had no idea that I needed nutrition. If I go further into the journey, much like what you were alluding to about your personal story, I go further down, because obviously I immediately started looking back and I was like, okay, multiple courses of antibiotics when I was a kid, tonsillectomy. Okay, so I had a biome issue. So I had leaky gut permeability. Now, of course, now I'm eating processed grains, and now I'm starting to get depressed, and that's binding to opioid receptors in the brain, and that's having a negative impact on X, Y, Z. And hey, if I've got pyroluria and I'm excreting, you know, if I've got some genetic aberration where I'm excreting zinc and B6, then maybe I'm going to experience more anxiety. And I pieced it together and I was like, this is exactly what happened to me. And I ended up going on this cycle of having sugar cravings, high adrenal function, inability to sleep, which obviously raised adrenal function, and then fast energy foods. So when I was a kid, 4 or 5 years old, I was eating Harvest Crunch bars, and there was no cupboard that I wouldn't scale to get to that Harvest Crunch bar. There was no staircase that I couldn't climb to get to the next bit of chocolate or whatever it was that was going to give you that sugar fix. And I could just see how that unfolded. And then if I look at, say, the vaccine schedule that I had as a child, I'm not entirely aware of everything that I had. My mum doesn't really remember, but for sure, I got vaccinated against something. Then I ended up nearly dying of what it was that I was like. I can't remember if it was mumps or something. Yeah. And I'd love to find out, but yeah, you can see the timeline of events, and then you can see how that affects your personality growing up. So when you're at school, well, I was the shy one, because that then affects your environment, and then that becomes your reality. And then I found out that then I thought I had depression when I was 18 because I was reading Sunday Times Style magazine, and it was telling me that, depression was a disorder. I was like, well, I can identify. I'm sure most people can identify with these symptoms. And I was like, well, I need antidepressants. The only reason I didn't go to get antidepressants was because I was too shy to go and tell a doctor that I had depression. Right. And then, of course, when I found out what I found out, then the depression evaporated. Depression is obviously a signaling system to tell you that something in your environment or in your body is out of balance, or that you need to motivate yourself to do something to create the reality you want. So there's so many different things to talk about depression, but with the chronic depression that I felt when I was growing up, I really do think that was attributed to the build-up and the toxicity that I had in my system, which I believe, without oversimplifying it, was born within the problem within my within my gut.
Well, put it this way, simply, your brain can only be as healthy as the blood that surrounds it. And if, you said vagus nerve, gut to brain, if your gut's inflamed, inflammation, depression, it's amazing. It's like, I've had so many clients come to me with certain things and certain illnesses or symptoms. As you said before, look, they're just different names. They're just different symptoms for the same thing. Yeah. Inflamed, toxic, deficient, internally balanced, and overly stressed. Okay, you get those things, but all of a sudden life's a lot better, and people, oh my God, my depression's gone or my anxiety's gone. It's like, yeah, it's not a condition. It's of what's going on internally and also externally in the environment. And when you work on that, now your external health is a result of your internal health. And for me, you said for 5 days before your shoot, what you'd starve yourself. I mean, you do it from 21 years old until you were 36.
I mean, sorry, can you say that again, Ryan? I just missed the last bit of voice.
That's right. How old were you? You did it 21 years old to how old?
21 years old till lockdown. Yeah, I'm on the book. All right. But it's a bit of a problem. It's a bit of a problem because social media is very much linked to, say, the website of my agency, and I knew what I was doing. So when this all kicked off, I had a choice, and it was literally like, keep my mouth shut and send some, do some updates and go and see the agency and things like that, or try and stop the world from being completely nuked. And I pretty much figured that there weren't that many people in my industry that were willing to speak out. And I know quite a few people know what's going on, but they're too afraid to speak out because of their wives.
Do you know Andrew Cooper?
I haven't seen him in ages, but I do know him. Yeah, he's with Young.
Yeah, because he's someone that I follow him on Instagram. He's one of the only blokes I follow on Instagram. He's like good-looking guy. I followed him because when I first came across him, he had a thing called Juiceman, and he was into juice and into health. But then he's like, he's he's proper, first of all, he's proper woke. I see some of the things he puts up, I had to about mute him, and he's also gone and got the vax and everything. I was like, what the fuck? Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was really surprised at that because he was really into like everything, hell. Like,
Do you know what though? I've come across so many people that like yoga instructors and spiritual people and stuff. Like I know somebody, or I know a few people, one of which springs to mind that I obviously won't mention any names. This particular person was very, very, I don't know, spiritual tarot, all about the power of the healing of the mind and everything. And I found out that this person was promoting, hadn't just gone and taken it, was promoting it, which is like, the antithesis of everything that they'd ever said. And I found that extraordinary. And I know I spoke to somebody through the agency and they said, most people have gone for it, and the agency were promoting it to the younger models. And I was like, I'm very grateful to that side of my life. It gave me a lot of time to think and develop other skills and what have you, and to travel. But I couldn't get on board with that because I knew too much about what was going on. So I made that decision from day one. I was literally like, I'm going to say something. And I mean, long before you and I connected on Instagram, I was probably like yourself. I was just hammering it every day, like night and day, getting called all kinds of stuff for stuff that then came true. I should add. I mean, I never got any. I got a couple of apologies actually, but in the main frame of things, I never really got, the people I would have liked, because that's just your ego talking, isn't it? But like it did come true, but I guess they just sort of, I can't remember that. But I don't think there was much. The only thing that I got really wrong was the timeline of food shortages. So I knew there was going to be food supply disruption, but I got that totally wrong. I thought that was going to be a lot sooner, but then you can't second guess everything in geopolitics.
They chop and change things as well, depending on how many kind of buy into it. So, certain people were starting to realize that COVID is bullshit. They changed the narrative when we go to war. And so, climate change and no, mate, there's what is it that what's the difference between a conspiracy theory and truth? 6 months. Yeah. I put it this way: it's like things coming true and people still pointing at conspiracy. It's like, what the fuck?
It's mad though, isn't it? Because then you go up to the people and you say, but look, this happened. And I told you, and then they'll give you some bizarre justification. They'll go, yeah, but it had to happen because of this and that. And then and then they'll tell you, and I'll say, well, where did you get that information from? They'll say, well, I got it on the main or ITV this morning or something like that, which for me is like sticking pins into my head. And I don't mean in acupuncture sense. I should maybe say nails. I can't even watch the mainstream media anymore. I find it really, really difficult. There was a period of time where I watched it, but mostly just to appease other people, to say that I see it from all sides. Because obviously I'd seen it from the 36 years of my life side. I've been nothing but programmed through the television set and through the media and then, my own independent investigation. I even prefer to call it investigation rather than research, because even research has been bastardized as a word, because in regard to research, you can't say that anymore because it's so every little nook and cranny has been already blocked up by the.
You said earlier about Mike Adams, and then you got someone like Dr. McCullough who had to put 25 years worth of articles behind a wall because they were going to come out. It's just and people,
they'll go to prison.
Yeah. Well, they will, and Mike Adams and the rest of them. It's just crazy. So if you really don't agree with what they say, come on, go on a table and let's discuss it.
Yeah, it's got to be why. Because I want these people to go and listen. Because you spend any length of time listening to McCullough or Mike Adams. I disagree. There's some things that Mike Adams have said that have been a little bit extreme, that have maybe set my heart racing because I feared they might be true, but maybe they haven't come true. But it's still his opinion. Journalistically, he's actually excellent, and he's a scientist, and I like his approach. And I want to hear these people, and I don't mind if I disagree with them. And I want to hear McCullough. I want to hear Mikovich. And, Mikovich disagrees with John Cowan on, I think I've got that right. I think there was some disagreement between Kaufman and Mikovich, or Tom Cowan and Mikovich, over the existence of viruses or the HIV. But I still want to listen to them. The fact that there is entities out there trying to prohibit that discussion, which is the basis of science, is just bizarre to me. But it's not bizarre. I understand why they're doing it, but it's fundamentally wrong, because they know that there are people out there that will never, ever come across these people because of those blocks and those censorships.
that's the thing. When you speak to someone, I say, well, before we get into it, do you know who Kerry Mullis is? They're like, Kerry Mullis is.
Yeah.
No. Do you know who Dr. Robert Maloney? No. Okay. Do you know who Dr. Stephen Lanker is? No. Do you know who Dr. Thomas Cowan is? No. Okay. Do you know, and you just go through it. And no, it's like, well, we haven't got anything to discuss then, because you literally don't know what anything, like, you've got no, it's a surface thick. It's an inch thick. So you scratch beneath the surface, there's nothing there, because you're just literally repeating what you've heard, rather than the people that have actually developed the test, developed the vaccine. So it's come out the other day. So there's no research paper available that shows the existence of any virus in any living fluid, from human or animal. It said if you go and take a sample of the chicken pox lesion, you won't find chicken pox virus. So it's Dr. Stephen Lanker has, as I said before, he's absconded his virologist title, because he said it's complete nonsense. He said there's no such thing. It's like being an expert in unicorn.
Yeah.
So it's just
And that's hard though, isn't it? Because then that's almost like, so I was having a discussion with a friend of mine, and I think we were, because I'm such a fun guy to hang around with, I ended up putting on Tom Cowan. I don't think it was your podcast, it was someone else's, and I can't remember who it was, but it was Tom Cowan anyway, and randomly put it on whilst we were chatting, and he was going, oh my God, like this guy's actually making a lot of sense. And I was like, yeah. And then he's like, yeah, but the whole of virology, because it's, this veil of superiority, this veil of complexity that they shroud. The whole of oncology is exactly what I said. I was like, well, can you think of another industry that's done the same, where actually the solution is actually so simple? I know there are technical elements and, the pancreatic enzymes, trophoblast, and different, myriad of different diseases up to 199 or whatever, and brain tumors are slightly, glioblastomas are slightly different, and you can approach them in different ways. But essentially, the simplicity of what we're actually talking about is such that compared to the complexity of like the whole of oncology, like the decades and decades, we're talking 120 years of bullshit research that's gone into allopathic medicine that's taken us from 1 in 100 to 1 in 2, and nobody still. I mean, for me, the genocidal plan was already and I mean, it's been going on forever and a day. I mean, this has been going on since the dawn of time, but particularly since the beginning of the 20th century. And this is just an extension of that. It's just an acceleration. It's like full steam ahead. We've got them all. Most people are brainwashed. Nobody's going to listen to the other guys because we'll just shut them out. Yeah. And that's essentially where we're at. But Tom Cowan, I find him fascinating. I find the way he talks. He's so monetary. He's just like, it's just like down the line.
He's not the most it's not the most fun conversation, but he's just like, but he's bang on the money. Like you said, you come to cancer, like cancer research and things like that. It's just an abomination of a charity. Like 60% of their money doesn't even go to, it goes to like their funding their lifestyles, and then the other 40% or whatever it is goes to the research that's pushed by big pharma, which, it's not. Cancer's a $200 billion a year industry in the US alone, let alone everything else. $200 billion, and they don't want to cure.
And I'll tell you what, Ryan, I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say it's $200 billion now. Can you imagine what it's going to be like for the people that are going to experience that as a side effect of something they may have taken that won't necessarily be prevalent as of yet? That's going to I mean, this is big pharma. This is big pharma win-win, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the other thing. People are saying, "Oh, I took it and I'm all right." It's like, what? You didn't die? Oh, well done. Well, that's a positive, is it? But not yet. No. You're not yet.
It's the problem, because it's the latency of the product, isn't it? It's like, there's complete indemnification for the manufacturers. That, I mean, even if you didn't know anything about virology, even if you didn't know anything about the history of the world or Satanism, just that one fact alone would be like a massive red flag, that to get the hell away from a product that is not insurable. And I believe Lloyd's wouldn't insure Pfizer or any of none of them are insurable. So hence they have their indemnity. And then of course they've always had the liability. They've always had indemnity ever since, I think was it 1986 when Reagan?
Yeah,
Reagan.
Yeah. Because
it was big.
Insurance companies said that their product is undeniably unsafe. Wasn't it?
Yeah. It's so unsafe, but it's like it's the big one, isn't it? It's the one thing that you can't say.
Yeah.
What's the question? And And I find that, that's obviously been, like I've got a German mother. I've got an engineer. My father was an engineer when he was back in the day. So I've got like a curious mix of kind of very fiery inquisition mixed with sort of an analytical kind of systematic system breakdown kind of mind of kind of working things out. And so if somebody tells me that there's no liability on a product, then you better, I'm going to find out exactly why. All other things being equal. But the fact is, as soon as you look into that history of those companies, you can't believe not only have they made this particular product that they've been firing out worldwide, but the fact that any of them are allowed to still be in business is just absolutely beggars belief.
Well, yeah, it's because, you pay the right people. You said before, it's 35 billion in the last 10 years before biggest vaccine producers for bribing officials, fraudulent science, falsifying data,
everything,
and killing people. But for people out there, because I've got to wrap this up in a minute, I'm going to continue this conversation, hopefully face to face. I'd like to say,
sure.
It's always good for people to know what's going on so they can understand it behind. Because once you understand the depth behind it, you can start making changes. And this is what I always say to people, like solutions for them. And I always try and put that up every day. Certain things to do every day to keep yourself healthy. And then what's to say to you as like the guest, what would be some of the things you'd recommend for people to do on like a daily basis or even a weekly basis that can keep them nice and healthy?
On a daily basis, I'd say for me, when I first got into this, I was very much about supplements. So I was feverish about supplements, like which supplements can I take? P5P, magnesium, L3 how much D3, B vitamins, methylate. I went into all these different cascade of supplements to try and improve things. Like there would be a magic switch. And sometimes they can be really helpful. But as you know, for me, one of the most important things is what you take away. So I can only give you, because we're all individual, I can only give you my experience personally. When I take away things like, unfortunately, gluten, which has been my biggest bugbear, that, processed bread, gluten, if it's sourdough and it's organic, can be a little bit better. But if I take away some gluten and I would say coffee, although I enjoy it, I know exactly why I enjoy it. And I know the best time to drink it. And I know the dopamine spike and I know the knock-on effect. I'd say if I take away those two things on an average week, my week gets a lot better. I would say watercress is my number one supplement. I don't even really like the taste of it, but watercress for me is one of the most nutrient dense foods. If you get decent organic watercress with no pesticides on it, and if you can fit that into your meals during the day, all other things being equal, you're getting significantly higher levels of, even iodine is like probably one of the most predominant minerals that's within it, but you're going to be significantly better off than 99% of the 99% of where you live, because most people wouldn't even know about it. So I'd say, I'm trying to glorify something that's actually a simple answer, which is just eat vegetables and salad and a lot of raw foods, eat organic and don't use dangerous cooking oils like seed oils and, coconut oils or avocado oils, my favorite for frying or whatever. And then just be balanced as well, and don't beat yourself up if you do end up going out and having a pizza. Don't let the guilt consume you, because then you're literally, then you're playing, you're in reverse then. So I think if I make some bad decisions, or if I go out and have a few drinks and, I might drink too much or something because I live in the north of England, so that tends to happen now and again. I know how to mitigate that, but I try not to judge myself. So I think those are probably some of the key points.
What you said about having a drink as well, sometimes it's like your quality of life is going to be increased by going out and having a few drinks with someone and with your friends and family. And for that time, you're having, that's food for the soul, that's your quality of life. But you don't do that all the time. And you mentioned like good foods, cutting out gluten, wheat, caffeine. And then I say people, something you said earlier on, going for a nice walk with your dog, or just going outside and getting some fresh air, listening to uplifting music and getting away from the mainstream problem. Yeah.
100%. You should just common sense stuff, but it needs reiterating, I think, because when you do those things, you really do you feel a difference. Most people that I know around, I'd say where I live, are not on board even with eating organic food. It's quite difficult to even come by unless you go to specific supermarkets. And so they don't understand the importance of it, much like I did, 10 years ago. I didn't get the importance of it at all whatsoever, but I think that's a pretty important take home for me. If I could,
I was going to say, you can always order it online though. If you've even got a shop there, things like my friend Joseph has got his Thomas Joseph Butchery. You've got that there, and they sell vegetables as well. Even like you can get Waitrose, actually organic online if you want, so you can always do that. And so there are options out there that people, I would say, if you haven't got anything around you, you do live in an online world now. And so it's like conversations like this are online, but then also detach from the things that are just, if you find yourself, being used by your phone or being used by the internet rather than you using it, then that's when you.
And also, right, I just wanted to add water filtration, which I know that you'll agree with. It's like 100% definitely, especially now with the fluoridation and the chemicals that are going in, even through the runoff of the rainwater. But specifically, I think everybody should have a water filter now. That worries me as well, with all the thyroid problems and all the forecast illnesses that we presume will start to occur as we move forward throughout this program. I would say water filtration is a huge one. I should have mentioned that. Should have been like the first thing.
Yeah, water filtration.
And maybe some fulvic minerals or whatever.
Yeah. Water filtration, it's always say it's not just what you add in, it's what you subtract, and it's like taking out those heavy metals in there. But it's all the medication that goes into the water now. People weeing it into the water, right? As well as that. It's all the chemicals that are changing the male fish into female fish and hermaphrodites. They've seen it in the alligators in Florida. Their penis isn't actually even big enough to impregnate the females anymore because of what's going on. So 100%.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to wrap it up, Rory. Absolutely pleasure, mate. It was fantastic, and we'll do this again. And I'll message you when I'm back in the UK, and we can hopefully meet up and do it face to face.
Yep, for sure. Good to talk to you, Ryan. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Awesome, man.
If you're struggling with gut issues, such as gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, heartburn, and want to finally be able to eat the foods you love without the crippling after effects, then don't forget to head over to reviveyourself.co and pick up your free copy of The Healing Health Paradigm today.